Alright, today let's tie a tailing bonefish fly I like for afternoon slicked off conditions here in Biscayne Bay for tailing bonefish. We're going to start off with a B10 Gamakatsu S Stinger hook, number 4 size. I dropped down in size a little bit for the afternoon bone fishing because the conditions usually slick off after a nice afternoon thunderstorm. Olive is a preference for color that I have just because of all the turtle grass or different grasses we have on the bottom. I'm going to use ostrich plume for the tail. You can see that the amount of movement this is going to have is going to lend itself really nicely to a lot of action for a small fly. And I'm simply going to take 5 or 6 plumes. It doesn't really matter how long. I'm going to just tie them on in the back of the hook. And then the nice thing about this ostrich is that you can kind of measure how long you want it, and instead of using your scissors, you can just break it and get a nice non-mechanical type look from cutting it. So it's kind of a nice feature that ostrich has. You can kind of break it, but the individual plumes are going to have a lot of movement. And then I'm going to take a piece of olive estaz to simply keep it from fouling. I'm going to tie it and just make one wrap around the back. Just kind of kick it up just a little bit. That little piece of estaz will help give a little bit of flash at the back of the fly, at the butt area, but also by kicking it up will help prevent some fouling from occurring. So we basically have the tail. We got a little bit of flash at the butt. Maybe the tail might be just a little long. It's all personal preference. You can just, like I say, pinch it for your particular liking. Then what I'm going to do is I love tying with Matuka, grizzly, marabou, but certainly I love tying with this material for a transition type material from the tail to the body. So I'm going to go ahead and tie in an olive barred grizzly, piece of barred marabou. Just palmer it like a normal hackle, kind of pulling the barbules back as you wrap forward. Just tie off just a little bit more action in the fly. So basically we got a nice little body there started, some action from the tail. It'll stick out a little further than the marabou. If you do notice the marabou is too long, you can always break that as well. That's a good thing about marabou as well. It can be broken and the length can be adjusted without cutting, which makes a more natural look. Then I'm going to put in some crazy legs or grizzly legs or loco legs, whatever your preference, just to give it a little more vibration, more so than movement. I don't like my legs real long. I don't want them to foul. So I'm going to tie them in long, just figure 8 like you would if you were tying in dumbbell eyes at the front of your fly. This guy will go around. Get them started, and I usually pull them back and make some wraps over all of the leg just to hold them in. I trim them short, like I say. I don't want them to go too far past the hook shank here, just to prevent any kind of fouling to occur. They're there to just vibrate. They're not really there to add a lot of movement. I got plenty of movement with the tail and with the body. The legs are just there to produce some vibrations that maybe will help attract the fish as the fly is being worked, or actually the less you strip it, the fly should have as much movement as you can possibly get out of it. The next thing we're going to do is move our thread up and tie in our dumbbell eyes here. Just use some medium or large, small bead chain, whatever your preference is for the conditions. I use a medium bead chain for the tailing bonefish here in the afternoon with this particular pattern. You can certainly drop down or go up in size relative to the water depth you're fishing. And then what we're going to do next is a technique you see a lot, I use a lot, dubbing loop. I just really like the effect that you can get from the dubbing material, and certainly the color selection, like I mentioned in the past, is kind of infinite, being that it comes from more of a trout background. So we've got our loop opened up. We're going to put a little bit of wax in here just to help adhere the dubbing. And we're going to use the Syneos olive colored laser dub. It's a little longer dubbing, which will help us for this particular pattern. Just pull off little amounts and kind of break it up just a little bit, because it is longer dubbing, but I do like the characteristics that it has, so I'm going to try and shorten it just a little bit. I don't want it to be real long, but certainly you can work with longer than you can, a little easier than you can shorter. Just fill up our little loop there, go ahead and twist her up. Caught one of my legs, which is not necessarily a big deal. Go ahead and pull him out, kind of get everything out of the way there. Got caught in the material. And then I just come back with my scissors slightly opened, just a little bit, you know, and I just pick at this little rope that we created, opening up all these caught fibers, pulling them out as much as we can. We're going to pick at it some more later anyway, but certainly to just get started, it helps to get a little more brushy effect created before you start palmering this loop. Get some of the bulk out of it as well. So basically we got it opened up enough to where we can work at it, pull everything out of the way, just get one wrap going and get my thread up here. And now we're just going to palmer it just like we would a hackle, cross-cut rabbit, anything like that, just kind of pulling it back as we wrap. And just go around the eyes, come back to the head and tie it off. Not catching the tool there. And now we've got basically everything tied in. Kind of get all these little stragglers off the eye area. Push everything back just a little bit. Kind of give ourselves a little more space. I typically do that a lot. Push the eyes back to move the material back, not to crowd the eye. And I'm just going to come back with my scissors once again, just slightly opened, and just pick at this, try to get the fibers unstuck from that rope. And once we've got that nice and bushy, get all the material kind of combed out of that loop, I'm going to come back and just trim the top flat. And then the front, I'm going to trim a slight angle, just kind of tapering my scissors at an upward, trying not to go too far back and trim off that marabou. You see that, you know, right now there's some fibers that are stuck in here really good. You can kind of see that rope. I'll pick at it a little more to free them up. You don't really want that rope effect to show. Really pretty much good enough. You could spend as much time in here as you want trimming. But that's good enough for our purposes of just explaining how to tie the fly, and then you can come back and add your own little twist. You can add different color variations, and then the last thing we're going to do on this little guy is put a little weed guard on here. Yeah, I can't leave good enough alone. Once again, just some 20-pound, 15-pound mono. I just use Andy, it's cheap, but you could use hard mason. A lot of people prefer it. And then just make a couple wraps behind it. Help kick it upwards. And then just measure the weed guard slightly past the hook point. That's it. You know, this fly works good. You can tie it in bigger versions, which I do normally for cruising fish or mudding fish, heavier eyes. It's a good redfish fly in different color variations. If you need a fly to sink fast, this will certainly sink fast with the tapered head, and then the minimal amount of materials will sink really rapidly if you need it to sink fast for deeper fish. But overall, it's a very simple. You could use fin raccoon if you wanted to for the tail instead of the ostrich. The ostrich is kind of movement oriented, just like fin raccoon or marabou. But overall, that design of silly legs, crazy legs, loco legs with a little dubbed head, some action in the tail. Works real well. Good luck tying. I appreciate it.